This week we're starting a new series where we recreate a scene from a movie and then use that to demonstrate and learn how to do a certain aspect of filmmaking. So this week the topic is sound design. Hello, my name is Simon Cade and this is DSLRguide. So the idea with this series is that I'll take a scene from a movie and I'll completely recreate it from scratch and then look at one particular aspect. So this week it's sound design, but maybe another time it'll be lighting or music or editing, and then we'll break down what it took, what the filmmakers did in that original film, and then how I managed to recreate that and what we can learn from that in the process. So this week's topic is sound design, and the movie that I'm going to be recreating from is Shaun of the Dead, which is one of my all-time favourite films. So let's me play my version of one of the very short scenes from Shaun of the Dead. Here you go. Okay, so the reason I chose that scene is because I think it's a really good example of a time when sound design is probably the main backbone to that little scene. You know, it's extremely important in that scene. I think it really wouldn't work nearly as well without any sound. So that's why I wanted to pick that one. And we're basically just going to break it down. I'm going to show how I did all of the sound in that one, and let's go for it. So first I shot my footage, and I'm not going to cover too much about that because this is focusing on sound, but I just, set up lights to try and match it to the original, and same with the composition and the props. But that was fairly simple. But the interesting part was recording the audio. So I didn't even bother recording any production sound at all, because usually the way they do it in Hollywood is the production sound, the sound that they record on set, is completely focused on the dialogue. So you have a boom operator getting all the voice and all the dialogue, but then that leaves it to the Foley artists and the sound team to do all of the other sounds. So that is footsteps, clothing rustles, and any other sounds made by props. So I set up my VideoMic Pro on a boom stand, plugged into an audio recorder, and if you look on the blog post you'll see a list of all the products that I used to record the sound. But then the idea was to get the microphone as close as possible, and then I would just start off by going very literally. So the idea was, if it was the sound of a drawer opening, I would find a wooden drawer. In this case I could use the same one that I'd actually been filming, and I just opened it at the same speed with the microphone nice and close, set with the levels as high as possible without peaking, and then that got me that sound. And I did the same thing for all the others. I would just go very literally and just find the exact sound, and then I put them all mixed together, adjusted the volume, set the timings, and then this is the result of that. However, if you go back and watch the original scene from Shaun of the Dead, you'll see there's a lot of differences between my sound and their sound, and theirs sounds a lot more larger than life. It's in a way been quite exaggerated, and this is often the way they do things in the industry. It's really not uncommon for them to find the best sounds in not the exact thing that they were filming, but in something else. So that really is the job of the sound recordist, is to not just try and replicate exactly what it was, but to try and find something that has the best sound. And you really do have to be quite creative and interpret sounds and really look around a lot to find the right sounds. So if you watch the original, you'll hear a kind of sticky slurping sound as he spreads the jam on the toast. So I thought the best way to do this was to look in the fridge. So what I did is I found this piece of ham that was left over, which was wrapped in tin foil, and a lettuce. And all I did was I set up the microphone and got it really close, and then I just squeezed the tin foil and the lettuce, and I found that this was actually pretty close to the sound that I had in mind. So now I'll just play the original jam shot with the literal sound of actual jam being spread, and then I'll play the second one, which is my kind of interpreted version of what I wanted it to sound like. See if you can hear the difference. So in the same way, I wanted the drawer to sound a bit more heavy and have a bit more of a kind of deeper sound. So I found that opening this tray in the fridge actually made quite a nice sound. So I recorded that and then I layered that in with the wooden drawer, and I found that that also got me better results. I also wanted the sound of the spoon hitting the mug to be a higher pitched one. So what I did is I found a different mug, and it was this time empty instead of being full, and I found that that got me the right sound. So I recorded that too, and I layered it in, and now this is my version of the sound, which is not just literal, but for the whole sequence, where I'm not just doing the exact sounds, but I'm doing my kind of interpretation, trying to get it to fit closely to the film. Here you go. And lastly, I added some white noise sweeps Now if you don't know what that sounds like, I'll play one in the background now, but these I made in Logic Pro, and that was the only time when I used software outside of my main editing software. Because the idea here is that you could do everything that I did using just Final Cut Pro or any of the other standard video editors, because there was I didn't do anything with the EQ, although I'm sure if I knew how to do all that fancy stuff with Logic and stuff, I could have probably made it a bit better. But I just wanted to kind of keep it simple and try and see how much I could do using just the video editor, layering all those sound effects. So making these noise sweeps was pretty simple, to be honest. I just followed a tutorial which I'll embed on the blog post, which you can find in the description. And speaking of the blog post, on there I'll also include all the different iterations that I've shown in this video so far, of showing how I went from no sound to the literal sound and then to the final piece. So you can hear all the little differences. So the noise sweeps were basically rushing wind sounds, which I used to accent the zooming in the shots, but then I also used it on the first shot to kind of add energy to that opening of the drawer. And you can see that it actually starts a bit before the shot of the drawer to kind of make you anticipate it, and I'll demonstrate that now. So this is just the whooshes sounds, and it does sound a little bit strange with just these, but I'll show you afterwards what it sounds like in the full mix, and hopefully you'll see that it does actually add things too, or at least I think it does, in my opinion. But let's not get too caught up in the technical side of things, because none of this would have happened if they hadn't put the ideas in the script in the first place. But my point is they had to make a conscious decision to add those opportunities for sound. So for instance, when they have the cup of tea, they could have just had it stirring and it wouldn't have made much noise at all, but they decided to have it tap against the side. And it's all those little sounds, the opportunities that they added in, which allows it to have that really strong rhythm and that really strong energy, which I believe is what they were going for. And the reason why they did that was because, or at least from what I've heard in interviews, they were trying to take the mick out of those loading up gun montages where you see in action films where the hero loads up their gun and zips up their jacket and it's all a really cool montage. Well, they wanted to do that for just a really basic mundane task, and that was kind of the joke. So it was only because they decided to do that joke that they used the fast cutting and the zooming in on the shots and the close-ups and the really fast movement within the frame and also the sound design. It was only because they were trying to deliver that joke that they had all these things pointing towards it being really kind of epic and really intense. So that's my point here, is that sound design can be a really good storytelling device. In this case, it was very useful for them to get across their joke. And I think that's the main thing to consider, is that if you can see it on the screen, you should also be able to hear it. That's probably what the audience are going to be expecting, and that's what most films do. And I do find that when you add the sound design, it really does finish off the edit, and it makes it seem a lot better than it was before you added those. It's kind of like, you know, the last piece in the puzzle, I think, at least. But obviously there are some times when you do want it to be quiet, but the important thing is to think of your story and whether it needs that. Because if you just don't have sound because of laziness, then obviously you might have some problems with your film. So that's it for this week. I'd like to remind you that the blog post has all of the different iterations of my version of the Shaun of the Dead scene as well as the original, and it's also got some tips on how to do that Logic Pro tutorial as well as some other videos which I found really inspirational about sound design in general. So that's it for this week, and I'll see you next time.